Ever wished prayer was more than just wishing, like a system for actually getting things done? That's what we're diving into today. A 5-step approach from the Bahá'í Faith. Less about dogma, more like a practical framework anyone can use.
Might be surprised to learn this framework actually comes from personal advice given by Shoghi Effendi, the guardian of the Baha'i Faith. Later, the Universal House of Justice weighed in. You know, the international governing body of the Baha'i Faith body. What's fascinating is how these personal notes became like this potent guide for so many.
Right. You'd think something super official would be more impactful, but sometimes those personal insights really hit home. Speaking of insights, let's get into step 1. It's all about setting the stage, but in a 2-part way. It's not just about asking, it's also about being ready to receive the answer.
Yeah, that receptivity is key. Think about it. If your mind's cluttered with 1,000 thoughts, how can that aha moment even break through? So part of this first step is about quieting the mind, making space for inspiration.
It's like tuning your radio to the right frequency before expecting to hear the song you want.
Right. And speaking of tuning in, I've heard people use all kinds of prayers for this, not just from the Baha'i writings.
Absolutely. The idea is to find words that resonate, that help you connect with a sense of something bigger than yourself. Whether it's from your own tradition or another, the power is in the feeling, the intention behind it.
Okay, so let's say we've done the mental prep work. Now comes the decision part, step 2. But this isn't your typical pros and cons list. The guidance suggests the answer might come as a flash of insight.
That's where it gets really interesting. We often think of decision-making as this logical process, but there's a whole other layer happening beneath the surface. By quieting the mind, you're actually tapping into your intuition, making yourself more receptive to those aha moments that seem to come from nowhere.
It's like you're priming your subconscious to work on the problem, even while your conscious mind is focusing on other things, and then boom, the solution hits you. Exactly. Have you ever experienced that, where you've been struggling with a decision, and then suddenly, while you're doing something completely unrelated, the answer just pops into your head?
All the time, like while I'm out for a run or in the shower. But here's the thing. Getting that flash of inspiration is just the beginning. Step 3 is where the rubber meets the road, and it's all about determination.
This is where many people falter. It's one thing to have a brilliant idea. It's quite another to actually summon the will, to act on it. Step 3 is about making that commitment, bridging the gap between thought and action.
It's like you've got the blueprint for this amazing building.
Yeah.
But now you actually have to gather the materials, hire the crew, and put in the sweat equity to get it built.
And that can be daunting. But the guidance here emphasizes that determination itself is a muscle you can strengthen. It's about choosing to persist, even when things get tough, even when you doubt yourself.
So we've got the inspiration, we've got the decision, and we're building up that determination muscle. What's next?
Step 4 is where confidence comes in. It's the belief that the universe, in a sense, is on your side, that the right resources, the right people, the right information will appear when you need them.
It's like trusting that you've got a really good support system, even if you can't see everyone standing behind you at every moment.
That could be a powerful feeling.
Right.
Knowing that you're not alone in this, that there's a force greater than yourself supporting your efforts.
Okay, so that makes sense. But then comes step 5, and this is where things get a little, well, unusual. It says to act as if the prayer's already answered. Like, what? Isn't that jumping the gun?
It might seem counterintuitive, but there's a profound logic behind it. The idea is that action itself is like a magnet, drawing closer, the very thing you're aiming for.
Hold on, I need you to unpack that a little more. How does pretending something is true actually make it happen?
Think of it this way. When you act as if something is already true, you shift your entire energy. You start making choices, taking actions that are aligned with that desired outcome. And that alignment, that shift in your being, actually starts to attract the resources, the opportunities, the people you need to make it a reality.
So it's not about fooling yourself. It's about aligning your actions with your beliefs. And in doing so, creating a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy.
Precisely. It's about stepping into the reality you want to create, rather than waiting for it to happen.
And that brings us back to the source of these steps. How did something so personal, meant for one person, become a guide for so many? It all started with someone named Mrs. Moffat.
She was an early follower of the Baha'i Faith. And like many others at the time, she made a pilgrimage to visit Shoghi Effendi in Haifa, Israel. During their conversations, He shared these 5 steps with her as personal advice.
And being the diligent note-taker she was, Mrs. Moffat jotted it all down.
These notes later became known as Pilgrim's Notes, valuable records of conversations and teachings from the early days of the Bahá'í Faith. Mrs. Moffat later compiled her notes into a booklet called The Call to Prayer, which was shared widely among the Baha'i community.
So in a sense, these 5 steps went viral before going viral was even a thing.
Exactly. And the fact that they resonated so strongly with people speaks to their inherent power and wisdom.
It's like that saying, good advice is timeless. But what I find really intriguing is how these steps, which were originally personal advice, might actually be more potent than something presented as a universal law. What do you think?
There's a certain intimacy to personal advice, isn't there? It feels less like a decree and more like a shared secret. A tip from a trusted friend. You know who's been there.
It's like getting a glimpse behind the curtain, seeing the human side of someone we might otherwise see as like an authority figure.
And that vulnerability can be disarming. It invites us to try something new, not because we're obligated, but because it worked for someone we respect.
Right, it feels more like an invitation than an instruction manual. And speaking of invitations, the Universal House of Justice has also addressed these 5 steps in their writings, even referencing Mrs. Moffat's booklet.
Their guidance acknowledges the potential effectiveness of these steps, while emphasizing that they aren't obligatory for everyone. It's about finding what works for you in your own personal journey.
So it's not about adding another set of rules to follow. It's more about providing a framework that people can adapt to their own needs and circumstances.
Exactly. The emphasis is on the spirit of the process, seeking guidance, making a decision, acting with determination, and trusting in a higher power.
And here's where it gets really practical. Think about how these steps might apply to a challenge you're facing right now. It could be a big decision, a creative project, or even just trying to break a bad habit.
Let's say you're feeling stuck in a rut and want to make a change. Step 1 would be about creating that mental space to reflect on what you truly desire. What are your aspirations? What's holding you back?
So instead of just saying, I want to be happier, you take the time to really delve into what happiness means to you. Maybe it's about spending more time with loved ones, pursuing a passion project, or simply finding more moments of joy in your everyday life.
Right. Then step 2 is about that flash of insight, that moment where you realize, this is what I need to do. It might not be a fully formed plan, but a sense of direction, a starting point.
So maybe you're out for a walk and it hits you. You need to sign up for that pottery class you've been thinking about for months. It's not a life-changing decision, but it's a step in the right direction.
Exactly. Then step 3 is about harnessing that determination. It's about making the commitment to actually enroll in the class, even if it means rearranging your schedule or stepping outside your comfort zone.
And that's where step 4 comes in. That belief that the universe, in a sense, has your back. Maybe you find a great deal on pottery supplies, or you meet someone in the class who becomes a supportive friend and mentor.
The point is, when you're aligned with your purpose and acting with determination, things tend to fall into place. It's as if the universe conspires to support your efforts.
And then finally, step 5, acting as if you're already a master potter, even if your first attempts are a bit wonky.
Right. It's about embodying that confidence, that sense of possibility, even before you see the tangible results. And here's the key. It's not about pretending that you're already perfect. It's about acting in alignment with the person you aspire to become.
So you'd go to class with enthusiasm, you'd practice diligently, and you'd celebrate your small victories along the way. And who knows, maybe one day you will become that master potter, all because you started by acting as if you already were.
The power of this framework lies in its ability to transform our internal state, which then ripples out into our external reality. And it all starts with that first step, quieting the mind and creating space for inspiration to flow.
Now remember, in step 4, when we talked about the right resources, appearing, this is where it gets really interesting. One of the examples mentioned is the idea that even the right book might show up.
This isn't about a mystical book falling from the sky, but about being open to receiving guidance from unexpected sources. It could be a book you stumble upon in a bookstore, a recommendation from a friend, or even something you reread with fresh eyes.
It's about recognizing the synchronicity, the meaningful coincidences that often appear when we're aligned with our purpose.
And these synchronicities can take many forms. It could be meeting the right person at the right time, overhearing a conversation that sparks an idea, or even a sudden flash of inspiration while you're in the shower. The key is to be open to receiving these messages from the universe.
It's like having your spiritual antenna up, tuned to the right frequency to receive the guidance you need. But how do we know what to look for? How do we discern those meaningful messages from all the noise of everyday life? Like trying to find a needle in a haystack, right? There's so much information coming at us all the time. How do we know which bits are truly relevant to our journey?
That's where discernment comes in. It's about developing that inner compass that guides us towards what truly resonates with our soul. And it's not always easy. It's a skill that takes practice and patience.
So it's not just about being open to everything. It's also about being selective.
Yeah.
About filtering out the noise and tuning into the signals that are aligned with our highest good.
Exactly. Think of it like this. Imagine you're walking through a forest, and there are all sorts of paths you could take. Some might lead you to a beautiful clearing. Others might take you deeper into the woods. And some might even lead you astray. Discernment is about developing that inner knowing. That helps you choose the path that's right for you, the one that leads you closer to your true destination.
And that destination, in this case, would be the answer to our prayer, or the solution to the challenge we're facing.
Yes, but it's also about something deeper. It's about developing a closer connection with that inner source of wisdom, that divine spark that resides within each of us.
So it's not just about getting what we want. It's about becoming more aligned with our true selves, with our highest potential.
Exactly. And that's where the real power of prayer lies. It's not about manipulating the universe to give us what we think we need. It's about aligning ourselves with the flow of divine will, with the unfolding of our soul's purpose.
And that brings us back to the intriguing idea of the right book appearing as an answer to a prayer. If we think of it metaphorically, what might that book represent for someone listening right now?
It could be a source of inspiration, a piece of wisdom that comes at just the right moment to guide them on their path. Maybe it's a book they've read before, but this time it speaks to them in a whole new way. Or maybe it's a book they've never even heard of before, but it seems to magically appear just when they need it. Well,
it's like the universe is saying, hey, I've got just the thing you need right now. Pay attention.
And it's not always a book, of course. It could be a conversation, a song, a piece of art, a chance encounter with a stranger. The possibilities are endless. But the point is, when we're aligned with our purpose and open to receiving guidance, the universe will provide us with the resources we need.
And remember, all of this started with personal advice, not some grand proclamation. Mrs. Moffat's notes, those pilgrim's notes as they're called, ended up being more powerful than perhaps even she could have imagined.
And it's a reminder that sometimes the most profound teachings come from the most unexpected places. It's about being open to learning, to receiving wisdom from wherever it may appear.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a question. What book might be waiting to appear in your life right now? What message is the universe trying to send your way? It's something to ponder, to be open to, and to trust that the guidance you need is always available if you know where to look